All right, we are back. We are back. Thank you for joining us. It's been a crazy, crazy day. And I do want to take the time to say thank you again to everybody. The comment section on TikTok has been absolutely insane. And it's brought a lot of new people into the conversation. I'm in new group chats, talking to new people, getting new perspectives, new ideas. It's been a fantastic time. So the TikTok page, that seems to be where the conversation is at. The YouTube commentary, that's pretty fun too. But we're trying to grow all channels, so it is a good time to let you know we are on X as well, formerly known as Twitter. You're familiar with the Elon Musk-owned X platform. Over there, I do share articles pretty frequently throughout the day. It's a lot of the stuff I like to expand about in these types of live sessions. So, the TikTok videos, there's usually 2, maybe 3 of those in a day that we cover some of those topics more in detail, but a lot of what you see on X, those are the articles I want to talk about. And ideally, if we can cross-pollinate this TikTok and X platform or this YouTube commenters and the X platform, then maybe we can get a little more in-depth analysis, a little more back and forth, a little bit of debate, if you will. The show is called Vince versus Everyone. And so far, I do get some people wander into the TikTok comment section, angry people. It's fun, sparring, dueling, hearing these arguments. But in the live sessions, that's where it's really at. Anybody can debate in the comment section. You can just go to Google. You can just find some budget analyses. You can just, you can find some information, some hard facts, things that are hard to refute. That's why I like talking about the public schools so much, because, they're really indefensible just by the numbers. Like, you can take your pick, whether it's an economic argument, whether we're talking about the budgetary argument, or even student outcomes. That's a great one. It's a winning battle for me. I've taken the high ground, I like to think. But no, that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're going to talk about the Louisiana case in the Supreme Court, Louisiana v. Callais. Now, I did put a video up on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, Rumble, all the channels. And just a quick 90-second version, a breakdown, kind of the background of this case, why the suit was brought initially, and then ultimately the Supreme Court's ruling that basically race-based redistricting is now, that has been taken out of Section 2 of the Voters' Rights Act. Up until today, the Voters' Rights Act Section 2 was basically used as a justification for majority-minority districts, meaning that a state was more or less required to have a majority-minority district to allow for those groups to have representation, to have the ability to elect their representation. And this was kind of a little tricky, the way that it's actually worded. And so it says that to provide an equal opportunity for minority peoples to participate in the election, that you cannot make a district that makes it hard for people of minority status to participate in an election. And so the argument for this, because participation is different than outcome. Participating in an election, the way the Supreme Court read it, participating means that you have the ability to vote. It doesn't mean that you're guaranteed an outcome. Like, participating isn't a guaranteed victory of like a race-based majority. That, to be honest, that's kind of as un-American as it comes. The idea that like you are nothing but the color of your skin, so you're owed a district based off of the color of your skin. That is racism, and that was the counter case. That was the suit for Louisiana's part, was that, hey, like, if we're disenfranchising, if we're specifically enfranchising these voters on the basis of race, and then by extension disenfranchising those voters because of their race, then isn't that against the 14th Amendment? And that's pretty much exactly how the Supreme Court ruled on it. They said, because of the 14th Amendment, you cannot create a district explicitly on the basis of a racial outcome. That's not allowed. Now, so there is some questions about inconsistency, because what about Texas? The Latino American Voters Coalition sued the state of Texas in their case specifically was that because of the Texas redistricting, there was no longer a majority Latino district, and they needed a district on the basis of being Latino. This is exactly the same as the Louisiana case, where they say, no, you cannot make a district expressly for the purpose of making it a majority black district or making it a majority Latino district. That is expressly against the 14th Amendment. That is actually contrary to the Constitution of the country. That favoring or disfavoring people on the basis of their race and nothing else is illegal. And that's the same in both of these places. And Florida they took the opportunity within 1 hour, literally within a single hour. They approved their new congressional maps, and one of the representatives, who will likely be losing her district in this upcoming cycle, was on the floor of their state House of Representatives with a bullhorn, a literal bullhorn, shouting that this is unconstitutional, which is wild because that is actually exactly the opposite. The Supreme Court ruled that Section 2 of the Voters' Rights Act, Section 2, the way that it was being applied was unconstitutional. That's why they overruled it. So clearly we are in quite a battle now. I've been saying it for weeks that this Virginia thing and all these other states, this is going to be a summer of redistricting. That is what is happening now. That's the new thing, right? And so Barack Obama, the Autopen himself today, he did take to Twitter to say that I'll read verbatim. I will read verbatim exactly what he said. He said, today's Supreme Court decision effectively guts a key pillar of the Voter Rights Act, freeing state legislatures to gerrymander legislative districts to systemically dilute and weaken the voting power of racial minorities, so long as they do it under the guise of partisanship rather than racial bias. And it serves as just one more example of how a majority of the current court seems intent on abandoning its vital role in ensuring equal participation in our democracy and protecting the rights of minority groups against majority overreach. The good news is that such setbacks can be overcome, but that will only happen if citizens across the country who cherish our democratic ideals continue to mobilize and vote in record numbers, not just in upcoming midterms or in high-profile races, but in every election and at every level. So, and thank you very much, VT Hubble, for your comment. I really appreciate it. I hope you stick around, or you can even go to Rumble or YouTube and you can watch the entire live show. Even if you miss it, you don't necessarily have to stick around. I know we all got things to do. So check us out on either of those platforms, or ideally both of those platforms, and join the comment section. Now, Barack Obama's statement here. It is funny because he does a really good job threading the needle. That's why he's remembered as the great orator that he is. And that is true. That is something he really had going in his favor. Whether it's himself, whether it's his speechwriters, I don't really care to speculate. The point is, the guy knows exactly how to put together a political message. That's why he got where he got. But if you lack those skills, if you don't have the Obama-level oratory skills, you run into a problem incredibly quickly. And you can find this in the video where I talk about this Louisiana ruling. Look in the comments section. All of the haters in the comments section, you will notice something. All of these people, you can't tell which side they're arguing for, because they're arguing against racism. They're like, oh, yeah, well, it looks like the racists were really upset with this one. And it's like, oh, well, we can see who the majority really is now. And it's like, well, isn't that kind of the whole point? Isn't that kind of the whole point? How can you can simultaneously argue that the voters in Virginia have spoken, and so the Supreme Court should say, damned be the rules, we had a vote, and then simultaneously turn around and say majority minority districts are constitutionally protected? You can't have it both ways. And some other dude with curly hair and a brown Tommy Hilfiger sweater is on his leftist podcast making the exact same point about me. That, the Republicans say they can't redistrict Virginia except for look at what's happening in Louisiana and Texas. Fundamentally, we're all working on a different pattern of facts. The only difference is my facts are right. That's the main difference. That is the biggest difference, is if you bother to freaking read, not just read some article written by somebody at the Times or the Washington Post. I'm talking about actually read the Supreme Court decision. I'm talking about actually reading the bills or understanding the rules of the Constitution of Virginia. If you're willing to do that, well, then all of a sudden it becomes impossible for you to maintain that your opponents are the ones keeping a double standard. When you understand the rules and when you understand the rulings, you start to realize that there actually is a logical consistency on the right that doesn't exist on the left. It doesn't. Regardless, it won't stop Republicans from playing power politics with this. So you're looking at a potential 30-seat swing in the midterms towards the GOP. 30 seats. I kid you not. If you look across the country, what is it, like 17 majority black districts that are expressly made because of the Voters' Rights Act. They are expressly in their state bill, when the maps were drawn, expressly called majority black districts. All 17 of those, now under the new ruling of Section 2 of the Voters' Rights Act, you could almost force those states to redistrict, because that is now considered an unconstitutional racial gerrymander. The first person in the state who sues anybody in those districts can say, hey, I am a Chinese person or a white person or a Latino person living in this majority black district, and the state expressly called it a majority black district. That's unconstitutional because that disenfranchises me on the basis of giving them favor for their race. And they'll win. It doesn't even have to go to the Supreme Court. It will win. That's 17 seats right there. You have 11 more majority Latino districts in the exact same situation that expressly by their state legislature are a majority Latino district on the basis of race. Now, from Barack Obama, from his tweet here, you can see those state legislatures, if they are motivated to keep those districts as they exist, could very easily just say, okay, well, we redrew a majority Democrat district and it's exactly the same. The lines haven't changed. So the only difference is these state legislatures in these states are usually Republican states. So those state legislatures and those courts and those governors making the decision about those redistricting in those circumstances where they are forced to, you just have to, hope that they say out of the kindness of their hearts, oh, yeah, we still let the Democrats keep it. You see how this is a real problem. Even if the Virginia Supreme Court goes soft and does actually say, you know what, we looked at the case and we decided the Virginia does have the right to do these new districts. Even if they decide that, that's only a 4-seat pickup. Okay? 4 seats. 4 seats to 30. If California does it also, what do they pick up? They pick up 6 seats. Okay, so you're still at a 20-point swing in favor of Republicans. And then, the CNN guy, he pulls out the board and he circles things and he talks about percentages and numbers all the time. One that he brought up, I think it was 3-4 weeks ago. Democrats right now have a favorability in the generic ballot poll. So a generic ballot, will you vote for the Republican or the Democrat in this midterm cycle? They do this every midterm cycle. And you see the Democrats right now have a 5-point advantage in the generic ballot poll across the country for sweeping the midterms. This same time, under the last Trump administration, they had an 8-point advantage. This same time, under the Bush administration, they had a 12-point advantage. Some polls even say 15-point advantage. So they're down to 5, and that's before this shootout started. And now you're in a double jeopardy. You're in a double jeopardy situation that makes it even worse, because you have the entire northeast of the country, all of New England, solid blue, about 40% Republican in terms of voting demographic, but solid blue in all of their districts, all the way from Maine down to Maryland. So now you're running into a real problem. You're running into a serious issue. Because if you want to then go back and make the case that this gerrymandering is unfair and it all needs to be independent commissions and it all just needs to be a level playing field, even if you manage to take the South back and try and make it fair, there's really no way to do that on a national level without simultaneously giving up New England. So it's a double bind for Democrats. And to be honest, even if they pursue that route, that we need a constitutional amendment that all redistricting is done in every state by independent commissions, even if you manage to do that, then you run into a problem. That's going to take a decade. Minimum. You're talking 10, 12 years before you even can get to a point that looks like progress. I mean, the civil rights movement, I mean, that was a generation of people trying to make a change. Something that today we accept as simply as like, yeah, like obviously, like, you know, like you can't use race as a reason to disenfranchise people's ability to vote. And that's like a normal thing now. Back then, it took like 20 years for them to get that done. When they were really politically motivated, it took a long time. So if the Democrats start today on this campaign of saying we're going to put down the sword, all the Republicans are going to say, you first. You first. Start with New England. We'll do one for one. And then slowly, they'll start that way, and then very, very slowly, they'll get to the point where they can get a constitutional amendment. Again, it'll take like, it's going to take like 10, 12 years. So, you know, I called my local plan truster, the guy that I was trying to black pill before, and I told him, you know, maybe you were right. Maybe there was a plan. Maybe that's why Trump hasn't been acting. He hasn't been acting worried about the midterms. Because everybody says political doomsday for Trump and Vance after the midterms. They say both of these guys are getting impeached. They're both going to prison. And then Hakeem Jeffries, isn't it Hakeem Jeffries, right? If both of them get impeached at the same time, then Hakeem Jeffries becomes like the new president. Though if you were going to impeach Trump and Vance, couldn't Trump like fire Vance, replace him with like some milquetoast, like Thomas Massey? Somebody who's like he comes in too fast, you're just not able to remove him. And so like, wouldn't you do something like that? They called that Trump-peachment during the first Trump admin. I don't know. There was some stupid meme. It kept like going around. It was so annoying. I think it's like right when the Cricut machine came out, so people could make their own like vinyl t-shirts at home. Anyway, so I accidentally led with the second story. The first story hits a lot more close to home. Abigail Spanberger, she had a real let them eat cake moment today, and it was really wild because like the cognitive dissonance, like how out of touch. I need to know, and I try so hard to make more and more money because it's for science. I want to know where the line is. When do you become out of touch with normal people, right? Like I was pretty liberal, like through my early 20s especially. And then I want to know, because even now, even as I've grown to be much more conservative, I still think that I'm a pretty empathetic person. I can understand. I have a lot of friends who are progressives or leftists even. I honestly, like one of my childhood friends is like a tanky now, like unironically. And as I make more money, and I wonder, like, surely I see these politicians and celebrities, and I think there's a limit, right? Like, you just hit, like, a certain net worth or maybe a certain yearly salary, and you just completely lose touch with normal people. So Abigail Spanberger was in this interview with Tyler Englander of WRIC. That's like I think that's the local CBS or maybe ABC outlet for Richmond. And he interviews her and he says, hey, you know, and he seems like a nice guy. You know, he's a professional. He's not going to like just attack this woman. But it does seem like he kind of had an angle. It seems, you know, he's a real journalist. He's a little crafty, right? And so he says, you know, hey, you know, you ran on affordability. How do you know, what is your administration doing right now to make things more affordable? And she kind of gets started, but he doesn't quite interrupt her. He's a little more clever than that. But he does say, like, well, how do you know, what about like the RGGI? You know, you rejoin the RGGI, that does come with a small cost. I mean, that at a minimum, that's like $5-6 a month. And you ran on affordability and even a small cost. Like, how does this make sense? Can you make sense with the RGGI why this is good for a elective voluntary tax that's being passed on to people, even in small dollars? How does that make sense if you run on affordability? And Abigail Spanberger, she can pick any example that she wants. She has an open board. He doesn't box her in. But she says, well, we rejoined Reggie. It's funny, they have a cute name for it. She calls it Reggie, right? So we rejoined Reggie in Virginia, and yes, that is a small cost. That is true, but that wasn't because of affordability. That's because of protecting our environment. But our administration's done a number of other great things, and she could have filled in the blank with anything here, but she chose this. She said we've also added the Balcony Solar Act. We've added the Balcony Solar Act, and that gives Virginians the opportunity to save on their electric bill by lowering the cost of adding solar panels and taking advantage of alternative energy sources. And our state's also investing in battery technology so we can better store and redistribute that energy that goes back into the grid. And so I just thought it was weird, right? It was a pretty short interview. It was only, the segment they aired of it was only a few minutes. But I thought Battery Solar Act, or Battery Solar Law, well, that's interesting. This woman every day she's signing into law something else. So I look up, what's this battery solar? If I can save money on my electric bill, believe me, I need it. I don't make that much money. So I look it up, right? The battery solar law means that you can buy one of these solar panels. It plugs right into a wall outlet and it starts feeding back into your house safely. It converts in one unit. The solar panel, you attach it to your balcony or the fence, and then you run the cable back into your house. You plug it right into the outlet, and it backfeeds. That DC power converts to AC, and it backfeeds into your house, and it can lower your cost of electricity. It says even for most houses, it can produce, I think, 800 kilowatt hours in a month. And so that amounts to what, like 10%, I think is the estimate, but they're using like an apartment. If you have a house, it's going to be more than that. Anyway, so, 800 kilowatt hours, that's not chump change. That's a little bit of money, $200 to $300 a year. And you and I know how advertisements work. That actually is probably like $150 to $200 a year, but I digress. So I look up, well, dang, that's crazy. How much does one of these units cost? And they're between $1,000 to $2,000. One of the cruddy cheap ones, where you probably have to replace that converter after 3 years, that's like $1,100. Or you get like a nice one, a good one that has a long 20-year warranty, and it's like $2,000. $2,500 was one of them that I saw. So $300 per month, or no, I'm sorry, $300 per year. So I'm looking at 8, maybe 10 years just to get my money back on this thing, before I even start to recoup the $10 a month that I'm spending on Reggie. And then not even to mention, like, in her mind, like, when people are like, dude, I'm trying to raise a family in my apartment, it sucks. And she's like, I know. I went to my daughter's condo in Fairfax, and it's just so small. The kitchen island, you can barely cut anything up on. And it doesn't even have a sink in it. And it's like, dude, this woman is so wildly out of touch. It's like a let them eat cake moment, but just for normals, like for 2026. It's like, ma'am, the people can hardly afford the bread. And she's like, well, then tell them to eat cake. I mean, what do you want? Their power bill went up to another $10. It's gone up 50% since December. And it went up another $10 for literally no reason. Just tell them to buy a $2,000 solar panel and install it in the yard of the house that they own or the balcony of their high-rise condo apartment, and like they'll be fine. What are they bitching about? And that's literally how this woman's acting. Like, I don't know, dude. I mean, listen. If you like, there are some Democrats that are at least kind of honest. They just like really hate Republicans. They just hate Republicans. So they just vote for Democrats. And that, honestly, like I don't really have hate for anybody in me, but I get it, right? Like debating with people makes you upset, especially when you realize that you just got nothing. You reach in the bag and there's nothing there. But I've really taken the piss out of people before. I'm not lying. You can look at some of my comment sections. You can, especially Instagram. By the time Instagram starts feeding those videos out to people, I've been debating this subject on TikTok with you guys all day. So by the time somebody even shows up on Instagram, especially when it's public schools that we're talking about, there's nothing. There's not an argument I haven't heard yet. I've just dumped the clip. And people get angry because, like, that just doesn't feel good. Like, so yeah, I can see why somebody would be like, dude, I just really can't stand Republicans because, they sat around the dinner table and they said, I just think that those people I think that those illegal immigrant kids should definitely be allowed to go to school with me. I think it's good for everyone. And they're like 13. And so their dad or their uncle basically gives them like a logical beat down. And then by the time they go off to college and somebody tells them that's actually abuse, then like, yeah, they're probably going to be like, oh yeah, I was abused by a Republican. He abused me in a debate where he had all these facts and I reached in the bag and I had nothing. Now, obviously, I'm like, that's a little bit of a pantomime. That's a caricature. I'm lampooning a bit. But then there's also people that are just, they have nowhere else to go. Like literally they've had a crappy boss and a crappy job, and like, you have to take off next. You have to use your PTO next week. It's like, but I was going to use my PTO in August to take my family to see my grandma. She's turning 90. They're like, not my problem. You use it next week. Use it or lose it. And it's like, you have one or two jobs like that. That's assuming you have benefits. Say you got nothing. Say it's Thursday, it's Friday morning. You're waiting on your check from the grocery store, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, sorry, we mailed it to you." You're like, "Bruh, my rent's due today. Like, if I don't pay this, I'm gonna be in big trouble. My landlord's gonna be pissed. He's gonna charge me a $50 late fee. I don't even make that much money at this convenience store." And they're like, "Yeah, sorry about it. Like, I mean, I mailed it to you. You'll have it, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It'll be there." And now you got to go back to your landlord and explain that you didn't mean to be late this time. There are people in that situation. That's a very specific example because I've lived it. Like, I've seen that. So I understand people with no other options. And somebody's running for office and they say, dude, we're going to take care of you. We got this program. If you use this government debit card, then they have to direct deposit it, and it always goes through on Thursday night. Somebody in that situation is going to say, yeah, because I'm tired of getting screwed by my boss. Or they're going to say, you know what? Hey, like that guy says that our food stamps is out of control, and he's gonna make it so I can't even get a Dr. Pepper. Like, I can't drink the tap water at my house. Like, to them, like, this is an assault on them. You have to, I know it's hard, but you have to try and see it from these people's perspective. When you campaign on, like, there's too much food stamp abuse, that is true, but somebody who relies on this program is going to be like, bro, but while you're taking care of the abuse, where does that leave me? Well, what am I supposed to do while you sort out this problem? Because there's a very good chance they had nothing to do with that problem, or to the extent that maybe they did. They're like, dude, like, what? I mean, what do you want me to do? Like, I can't trade a couple things of honey buns for some, like, half a pack of cigarettes. It's like, well, no, you can't. But, like, from their perspective, yeah, you try and be empathetic. And I'm not saying everybody's motivation's great. I'm just saying try and see it from their point of view, right? It's hard. It's a hard exercise. It's not. If it was easy, we wouldn't be in this mess. So my point is, you have somebody like Spanberger who says, I'm going to make the cost of your prescriptions go down. I'm going to lower your healthcare premiums as long as you don't make more than $40K a year. Then you look at that and you say, okay, like, this is that's going to work for me. What I'm supposed to work for the budget hawk who wants to cut everything and tells me I need to work harder. Oh, he's going to let me keep my taxes. I don't pay taxes. At the end of the year, I file for a refund, which is, by the way, almost everyone. For anybody who says tax strike until they sort out the fraud, by the way, almost everyone is filing for a refund. They take the taxes out of your check before you even get it. So good luck trying to withhold that from the government. If enough of you put your withholdings to the maximum, they'll catch on to that and they'll probably throw you in jail for some kind of paperwork fraud. But no, so this is a tough hold to slip, right? The only way you can do this is making good on the immigration promise. I'm sorry. Like, I don't say this to demonize anybody, and I don't think that we should have jackboots running around ghettos and poor neighborhoods and locking people up, like handcuffing people in the streets and dragging them off, unless they truly are a violent danger to their neighborhood, then the best way to handle this is by going after business owners that repeatedly engage in exploitative labor practices, that they hang out a job. Oh, well, we're hiring an electrician for $18 an hour. Oh, well, we just can't find one. We just can't find an $18 an hour electrician. So we had to outsource that job. Oh, yeah. We're going to contract to do your roof. And we come in under bid, you hire us to do the roof. And when the work crew shows up, you can't even physically communicate with any of them. None of them can look you in the eye, and you're like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. When we see these things happening, we have to ask ourselves, those people who have no other options, you don't need them to be on board. Yeah, again, me personally, I don't like if somebody's living here and their visa's expired. If they do something that is definitely going to make them a target, then yeah, absolutely send in like 20 guys and drag them off, whatever. You get no sympathy from me. But regardless, whether you're Mr. Nice Guy or not, if the person who's hiring them, if the owner of that business is turning a blind eye while the general manager, director, executive, whatever, if that person has no process to vet people, or even has a process that allows people, what's up, Hams? If that person has a process that allows people who are here illegally to come in, and the HR manager is processing their paperwork and cutting their check, and if the hiring manager or the department manager is hiring these people and not doing any vetting whatsoever, if that's happening repeatedly in a company, then you don't actually need to like go and chase these people around their neighborhood. You need to walk into the office, you handcuff the owner, the president, the manager, and the HR lady, and you frog march them out. And you probably only need to do that like 2 or 3 times to a couple mid-level companies. And that'll be a national news story. And what you will not see is a bunch of leftists crying that some white-collar company CEO got arrested for illegal labor practices. Not one of them is going to protest that. Because if you want to try and gin up anger, it's going to take too many words. Oh, well, I know that we hate CEOs, but we had to arrest this one we need to protect because he was just protecting the illegal Mexicans that had nowhere else to work. Like, nobody's listening. Nobody's listening to that. So, no, if you go after the business owners that are hiring illegal exploitative labor and undercutting the local labor market, if you do that, there will be no counter protest, and that solves all the other problems. When a lady who maybe in her situation, she's stuck on food stamps because she has too many kids, so she can't afford childcare or whatever. The childcare in her area that she qualifies for just she doesn't feel comfortable leaving her kids there. That lady, you're never going to convince her that a budget hawk is somehow good for her. You're probably not going to convince her that deportations are good for her. But what you will do is you'll convince her to get out of that hole, to get out of that gutter, when she finds out that she can get a cleaning lady job that pays like $18 or $20 an hour. Because when she sees something she is qualified for, something that is for a wage that's actually dignified, then you don't have to actually convince her of anything. You just say, hey, in this job, you get 2 weeks of vacation. After 2 years, you get 3 weeks of vacation. We pay you a wage where you can actually afford to put your kids in daycare, or you can pay your sister to watch the kids while you're at work or whatever. Like this becomes a self-correcting problem. So you see, trying to change hearts and minds, it doesn't necessarily even start at the ballot box. In a lot of ways, it starts with business owners. It starts with people who have the effective mechanisms for change. You're really not even going to legislate yourself into a better country that actually cares about their employees. That's almost not possible. You can't legislate morality. So you have to start where it is. Not everybody needs to be a politician certainly not everybody needs to be a podcaster. But what you can do is you can create a system, you can create a series of incentives that start to move all of this other stuff in the right direction. Right. You can't add by subtracting. I love when Hams shows up. It's literally Esteemed Hams is like the bet is the he brought the term number one fan, but like in the other direction. I'm his number one fan now. There was one more story before I cut it tonight. The Texas card rooms. I brought this up a million times. The Lodge Poker Club. So you'll remember if you've ever watched one of these before. The Lodge card room owners, as soon as Miriam Adelson gave her money to the Texas casino industry so that she could open a Sands casino in Texas, the Lodge Poker Club owners were arrested on very specious charges. Their club was shut down, and they were basically given, they were told it's because there was a card cheat, that they were engaged in some kind of foul play, that they were cheating, that was why the investigation started. There were some claims that they were cheating. Then, after that, the investigation went on, and for almost 2 years, they were being investigated. You had plainclothes officers going in, attempting to play games without paying the membership dues. That in Texas, if you're not, it has to be a members-only club, which means you have to pay membership dues. If you're able to play without the membership dues, then it's just a casino. That's illegal in Texas. That's the trick there, right? So, during this investigation, they tried to catch him up with that. It never worked. They never got a recording of this happening. One officer claims that over 2 years, he was able to play twice, having not paid membership dues. He managed to not catch any of this on the wire he was wearing, nor on camera. He tried to talk to the owners about setting up an illegal game, or what by Texas definition was an illegal game, which would be coming in on his day off, playing with his buddies in the house with, and he was trying to kind of entrap them, so to speak, but they never agreed to anything. They just kind of did okay, yeah, we'll talk later. They did a lot of that, right? Anyway, just a little background. I had to watch this. I had to watch this weird news channel that only does poker news, so it was kind of odd. Anyway, the Lodge Card Club, the grand jury has now opted not to give charges based off of 2 years worth of evidence, 2 years worth of spying, all kinds of insider knowledge, other rings of cheaters that had been ousted by the Lodge Card Room that then supposedly the Lodge Card Room was involved in. All of this evidence presented to a grand jury. You only need, I think, just over half of a grand jury to actually issue an indictment. They couldn't even get that. So this club has been shut down for now, I think, like 4, almost 5 months. And they're reopened. Their business is reopened. They couldn't even charge them with anything. This literally just proves what I've been saying the whole time. You just shut down a business for 5 months for nothing, for literally nothing. That they proved in court. Like you don't exactly prove your innocence in court, but if you're unable to even get an indictment by a grand jury, then there's nothing there. They got their business shut down for no reason. Now, these are crypto bros or whatever. They have a pretty deep bag. So I have a feeling that this didn't necessarily bankrupt them, but it could have. It definitely could have. Yeah, exactly. It is a waste of the potential revenue. I don't think that these guys are able to sue. I'll be very curious. I'll be watching. But if you just tell every card room in the state, you'll be shut down. It could be for months, nearly indefinitely. We're going to drag you out in court with that whole process as the punishment thing. You're going to have these guys looking at this thing. They're going to say, dude, these card rooms, it generates some money. It's better than Bitcoin, but this ain't it. This ain't the business to be in. You end up with the same result. You paved the way for the Texas casino industry. So I just wanted to take a moment to just once again remind everyone why the bio on my profile is what it is. If you want to know tomorrow's news today, you follow this channel. Anyway, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have nationwide gambling now. You can just go on Polymarket. Actually, right now is it's like your last chance. You can bet on Polymarket. You shouldn't do this. This isn't financial advice. But it's like 85% on Klarna and Polymarket that the Democrats are going to win the midterms. Now's like your last chance for you can get a value bet that Republicans sweep, because I'm telling you, the Louisiana ruling today, by tomorrow, those odds are going to be like 50-50. Republicans are picking up 30 seats. They're picking up 30 seats in the midterms this year. So don't take a financial advice from me. But if you did, hypothetically, if you were wondering what I was thinking, what I'm doing later, I'm probably going on Polymarket or one of those betting websites to just see what $100 gets you. Anyway, so I'm going to get out of here. Yeah, join us on Twitter. The articles are on Twitter. The conversation's on Facebook. You can catch all the shorts on Rumble, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And yeah. Make sure to like, share, subscribe. I'm always here for you. I'm always here for you. You're not always here for me unless your name's Esteemed Hams. But so bad, you can always just like, share, and subscribe. Tell